At some point in your life, you're going to make a transition. You're probably going to make multiple transitions. And by that, I mean you're either going to move from school to a job or from a job to another job. And no matter what, no matter how much you prepare, how much research you do beforehand, how much you feel like you understand the new position that you're walking into, there's still going to be foreseen and unforeseen challenges in that change. Transitions are hard. Change is hard. Welcome to STEMdenity. I'm your host, Dr. Anna Hodgshire. I have a PhD in atmospheric chemistry, and today's conversation is with a friend of mine, Dr. Julieta Juncosa Calahorrano, and we talk about her personal transition between grad school to a postdoctoral researcher position and some of the challenges that came up with that. And even if you're sitting there going, well, I have not gone to grad school or I don't plan on going to get a postdoc, I still hope that you find this episode helpful in that some of these challenges are very universal. We also talk about some of Julieta's grad school experiences as a Fulbright scholar, being international from Ecuador. It's a really lovely conversation, and I can't wait for you to meet Julieta. Dr. Julieta Fernanda Juncosa Calahorrano, welcome to the podcast. I'm hoping I got like at least 50% right of the way on your name.
You did great.
Yes, okay. Redemption. So Julieta and I have known each other since probably about 2018, because that's when you came to Colorado State University, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Awesome. Okay, so we overlapped in the atmospheric chemistry department, and you actually overlapped with Zitelli, who, if people go back to Zitelli Samsa's episode, a few episodes back, you were in the same graduate group. So, I'm talking to all my friends, but that's how you make progress in life, is you just network and work with who you know. So I'm super excited to talk to you today because you are currently a postdoc at University of Minnesota in the Department of Soil, Water, and Climate. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Feels like an odd combo of things, but you know what? It's kind of fun to see how every school just comes up with something.
Does its thing, yeah.
And why I wanted to talk to you today is because we were just catching up socially a few weeks ago and talking about, the transition between grad school to, in your case, a postdoc, in other people's cases, maybe an industry job or whatever they go on to next. And that it's actually really hard. Like, it's something that people don't necessarily talk about or acknowledge a lot, but it can be a really jarring and difficult life transition. So I'm really excited to kind of dig into some of the things you've learned along the way, how you found support, how you found your grounding, because you seem like really grounded and confident now, but maybe there was some time that it didn't feel that awesome.
For sure.
Yeah. But I'd love to start, maybe just I find it really interesting and useful to talk about, how do we get to where we are? So if we backtrack, you are from Quito, Ecuador, and came to America for a graduate degree in atmospheric chemistry, which is not something everyone is particularly familiar with. So how did you even get into atmospheric chemistry and air pollution type work?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. I'm super excited to be here and to chat with you. I'm happy that we're reconnected. Always looked up to you while in grad school. So I'm really happy to hear of all the great things that you're doing. And now you're doing this podcast, which is amazing. So thanks for what you're putting out there for all of us that are going through transitions, or those others that are coming after us. So yeah, I was born and raised in Ecuador. I did my undergrad there. I've always really enjoyed sciences like math, physics, chemistry. And so when I was looking for undergraduate degrees, I was looking for something that included all of it. Fun fact, there's not a meteorology or atmospheric science undergrad degree in Ecuador. So that's not really something that was on my radar. And it actually makes a lot of sense. There is not a lot of weather that goes on down there as it is here, right?
Not like a lot of weather. Is it just kind of balmy and nice?
Yeah, all year long. Yes, we're very spoiled. But here you have hurricanes, you have tornadoes, you have like beautiful clouds that change with season. You have the changing light hours during all the year, different seasons. So we have less of that changes, and I think that's one of the reasons that there is not an offer of this career back in Ecuador. But anyways, moving on, I decided to do environmental engineering, which, merged math, chemistry, physics, and biology. Definitely the latter one was probably the one that I was the least good at. um, and my undergrad was very focused on water and soil sciences until I took a class with a professor that had also come to the US and did atmospheric chemistry for her PhD. And I don't know if it was her passion on the subject or like, I don't know what was it, but I fell in love with what she was teaching us. And I thought it was really, really fun. And then I got the opportunity to work with her the last year of my undergrad. She has meteorological measurement station at the university. And so she hired me in the last year of my undergrad. And then I stayed 2 more years working with her and doing research. We launched ozone zones and also installed an aeronet in Quito and Galapagos. And so that was my first introduction to research. It was really fun. And I always knew that I wanted to go to grad school. That was kind of like engraved on all of us by my mom. She was like, you can do whatever you want, but you have to go like study and go to at least do a master's. And so it was very clear to me that that was my next step. And so I look for different options. And, it's not super easy to find opportunities. So I applied to a bunch of different things. I applied to Korean fellowships. I applied to universities in Canada. I applied to the US. I applied to Fulbright. And I applied to the UK as well. And I got a Fulbright, and I was very, very blessed to be able to come to the US. And and then I applied to CSU and a few other universities. And I had to make a choice, and I chose to go to CSU. And that was mostly because of Emily, because one of the first things that was very clear to me was how awesome of an advisor she is. And just to make it be clear, this is Emily Fisher, who's a professor at CSU. Yeah.
Yeah. A couple questions from that. For, I know the word Fulbright scholar, but I never applied for one because I've never, just it hasn't crossed my radar. So can you describe that a little bit more?
Yeah, so Fulbright is a really fantastic program. It's based on the principle of cultural exchange. So how we can create a better world by understanding each other better. And there is actually a two-way exchange in Fulbright. So there are Fulbright scholars that come to the US to do their graduate studies or some other type of scholarship work. But there is also people from the US who go to many, many places in the world to either, there is a program for teachers. For example, I had a few friends from the US who went to Ecuador to teach English. But you can also go as a scholar. And so you have to partner with a researcher in whatever country you're going to and work through a research plan. And so this like two-way cultural exchange for a better understanding of different cultures and different countries. So it's a really, really fantastic program. It's changed the life of many people, not only those of us who have been blessed with it, but also, the countries, the resources, the different projects that come out of it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Is there like a time limit on the Fulbright scholarship?
It's as I told you, there are different types, but they are an annual thing. So every year you can apply for it. I'm less familiar on how the ones in the US work, but if you're applying to come to the US, you have to apply. You have to apply a year and a half before, and then you get prepped that first year after you get the scholarship. they train you on different things, like how to live here, which universities to apply to, things like that. So
That's cool that
yeah.
there's like a training component. Was it helpful?
It was super helpful. Um, for example, they train you on your English skills.
Hmm.
So if your English is not, it's at a medium level, they give you free training in the US so that you can improve that level. So that then when you are doing your academic work in the US, you are already at a higher level. And then there is a lot of, not a lot, but a few seminars where you interact with other Fulbrighters as well. And you hear about their experience with like past Fulbrighters, alumni, and then with your current cohort as well. So like in this process, you start creating a little bit of a family, which is really cool as well. Yeah. And then usually for when a foreigner is coming to the US, the scholarship is for 2 years. So, for example, I did my master's with that scholarship. There are other people who partially fund their PhD. So the first 2 years are funded by Fulbright, and then the rest is on the universities or whatever other projects they get.
Cool. And something I want to just like slightly highlight in case the listeners missed it, which is that your undergraduate advice, you said, Ecuador doesn't really have an official atmospheric chemistry type program, but your undergraduate advisor had trained in this and came back and was in, I'm assuming, the environmental engineering department. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's actually really common, in academia, in jobs, that you have like this specialized training, but wherever you end up, you're not necessarily, whatever department, company you're in doesn't necessarily look like what your training is, but you make it work, which I think is really cool because there's not that many atmospheric science or atmospheric chemistry programs in general in the world. Yes. I know the US the best. And your advisor is definitely your current postdoc advisor is definitely a atmospheric chemist, I would say. And he's in this, what did I say it was? I've already forgotten.
Soil, water,
and climate. Is that right?
Yeah.
And my co-advisor in grad school was in mechanical engineering, and he's an atmospheric chemist kind of guy. So I think it's good to remember that when you're looking for that next job, for people listening, that you might not find the title that looks like what you are, but to look around and understand, okay, what are the opportunities, if it's a school or a company that you're applying to, and having those inside conversations and people that at the place is really helpful to tell you, oh yeah, this place actually does value what I do. They just don't have something that's my title. So
yeah.
And I've had all sorts of titles through my years, solutions lead being the weirdest one, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And that's like exactly what casting a wide net means. I feel like in my mind, that's what it means. And that's definitely something that I've had to think about as I am looking for jobs or like looking of what opportunities I can give myself. And for sure, like if I go to Ecuador, there's not going to be a position for an atmospheric chemist, right? But there are going to be different departments, the chemistry, like you talked about, and in the US and elsewhere as well. So for sure.
Yeah. My postdoc advisor was in Department of Chemistry at CSU. Again, we have an atmospheric science department, and yet these people were able to find jobs that better fit them in these other departments, partly because, maybe atmospheric science wasn't hiring at the time or whatever reason. But yeah, I think it's kind of cool once you start digging under the hood that even though there's all these like official titles, they don't mean that much. As long as you're good at what you do and you can show that like you have the competency to, succeed in what you're trying to get into. That's the limit, it feels like, which is comforting, especially, in today's job market.
Yes, no kidding.
Awesome. So I'm going to fast forward a little because I think we'll kind of look back at your PhD a little bit through the lens of where you are now.
Okay.
But, grad school, our program requires us, that we went through, requires us to get a master's and a PhD. Did you always kind of know that you were going to continue on to the PhD, or was that a decision point for you after the master's?
No, I was very clear. I actually was very clear that I was going to go all the way to postdoc, and then after I hit the postdoc, I was kind of lost a little bit. So
Okay.
it was very clear that I was going to stay for the PhD, and it was very clear that I would look for a postdoc after that.
Okay, yeah, that was actually my next question of like, how did you decide? Because not everyone goes to a postdoc when they're in grad school. Some people go straight to industry or nonprofit or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
I think the reason why it was so clear in my head, it was because the only model that I had about this graduate path was my advisor back in Ecuador, my undergrad advisor. And so that's what she had done. And I was like, okay, so that's slowing down a little bit. I always wanted to be a professor. I've always wanted to teach. That's like, I don't know why. I
You're
remember
gonna be
I've
so
been
good at it. That's why.
5 years old. I was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm like, you're drawing a professor.
Oh,
So,
that's so
um,
cute.
and so I saw her and I was like, oh, this is a professor. Okay. So these are the things that you need to do to become that. And so it was, the pad was very clear to me. And even like the time frame of that pad was like a 10 year, 8 to 10 year time frame was also very clear to me.
Yeah. No, that's actually really
Mhm.
cool. And I think that's I encourage people to try different things, but also like you don't have to if you know that this is like you want to become a professor and you know the steps that can get you there, right? Your path isn't the
Yeah,
only way that people can become professors. There's people in my
that's true.
department that have worked in industry for 20 years and then they decided, nah, I want to be a professor now. There's different ways of getting to the same outcome, but like I can see the excitement, I can feel the passion about being a professor for you. So why
Mhm.
not take the most direct route that's going to get, and maybe something else will pop up, but does that mean
Yeah.
that you're going to start applying for professor positions back in Ecuador? Because your plan is to go back to Ecuador after your postdoc, right?
Yeah. Well, so I've been applying for professor positions since I started my since like the last year of my PhD. Actually,
Oh, okay.
not a lot, but like opportunities that I see
Yeah.
that would be a good fit. Obviously, I haven't gotten any position, but that's okay. Not all the stories are successes stories, and I think we should also talk more about that. Um, in general, not in this
Yeah.
podcast. But so yes, to answer your question, yes, I'll be applying to positions in Ecuador, and that looks a little bit different because not necessarily all the positions are like open for applications for everybody, but it's some of them can be a little bit more someone, you chat about it, and then you talk through an opportunity. So as I said, like I am thinking about how I can give myself those opportunities by reaching out to the right people, reaching out to the right universities. A lot of reaching out has to
Yeah.
happen. And then I am also applying to, I, so I would say, since we talked about Fulbright has this 2 year requirement to go back home. And it's a requirement that I want to honor. This is the promise that I made to Fulbright, and I also really love my country and I want to work for my country. I also have now a partner from the US, so having the option to come to the US has become a little bit more important for us. And so that's why I'm also applying to positions here. But I'm really open to anywhere. I don't know if I would say anywhere in the world, but like casting a wide net globally as well.
Yeah.
Um,
How is
yeah,
that? I know we keep, jumping timelines, but I love it because, life isn't linear, so why not?
yeah.
How is that reaching out piece? Because that's, that can be like a choke point for a lot of people, myself included, of like just reaching out to
Mhm.
someone who doesn't know me to talk. Like, what is that like for you?
Yeah, I think I get very scared of reaching out because you don't know, like
Yeah.
if people are going to respond or how long people take to respond. But I would say I have this experience has taught me that human relationships take work. And I think that is for everything, right? For partnerships, for friends, for families, for professional, like everything. And I was very um, mindful of staying in touch with my undergrad supervisors, with whom I luckily had a good relationship with, right? Like that's not the case for everybody. And so um, I was lucky that that was the case for me. And whenever I go back to Ecuador, I try to visit them. And if they've invited me a couple of times to give invited talks or a class there. So that channel has stayed open. There's another Ecuadorian student who joined Emily's group recently. And so she was from another university. So I was like, hey, we should like make a group about all these people. And so she introduced me to a couple of her professors, and I also introduced her to like my undergrad professor. So I've been like having interactions with these other people whom I wouldn't known otherwise. And then and then you start getting to know other people. I guess social media also helps, but I'm trying to stay away from it. I don't do a really good job when social media is in my life for myself and for the people around me. So, but it's the world we live in right now. And so, yeah, that's how I create my network. And then, I don't know if shameless is the word, but being a little courageous. That's a better word. Like being courageous about being like, hey, I'm going to be back in a year. Like, do you know of any opportunities? And like reaching out. And it's scary. And that's one of the things that I've thought a lot about in this process. Like, so many things are scary. Like sending a paper to a journal is scary. Like giving your thesis defense is scary. Like so many, sending your first email to your authors is scary. And so like we have to do scary things all the time. And so that's what I think of. And I hope for the best outcome. And if it's not the best outcome, then well, that also gives you some sort of information, right?
Yeah, no, God, like feel like people should just edit out my, rambling whatever comments and just focus on what you just said, because it's so good. Human relationships take work, 100%. I've been really lucky that I'm not a natural networker, but I have this almost uncanny ability to kind of find people who are much better at networking than I am, and then basically just baby duck behind them. Right? Like my graduate advisor was very like, this person and this person, I know this person, and I'd just be like beep, 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 behind him and like meet all these people. And then my current research group, the director of the research group is, he has this vast network, and I get to go to conferences with him, or I get to hop on a call with him and just like meet people. And so now, people know me through these interactions. So I think it's incredibly impressive that you're doing a lot of that work yourself. And I really like we do a lot of scary things. Totally, like giving a talk is scary. There's so many things. And there's a saying that I've heard recently that I like, which is basically 20 seconds of courage, right? You could take 2 hours to compose an email to someone you don't know, or to your committee or whatever. And if you never send it, well, did it really matter? But if you can just sit there and like, start to move your hand towards that send button, and then beep, that wasn't even 20 seconds. That was like 1 second of courage. But still, right, that little, you just have to get started. When you stand up in front of an audience to give your talk, you can't just stand there in silence forever. You have to get started. And like that 20 seconds is kind of that time frame that it takes your brain to sort of be like, well, I haven't died yet, so I guess we'll keep going.
Yeah. They haven't thrown apples at me yet.
Exactly. So. They haven't booed me off. No one has fallen asleep. It's only been 20 seconds. So let's keep going and see what happens.
Let's check in 10 minutes.
Yeah. And so I think that's a really great segue into, speaking of scary things, the transition between grad school and postdoc, and maybe to just kind of, start off at the basics. How did you even get this postdoc position?
Yeah, man, this transition is something that I can talk for so long because I've thought about it for so long because it impacted me a lot. But I got this position actually a like 10 months before my graduation, and it was just such a like things aligned so well. I am so thankful that people made me aware of this position, and that my current advisor saw the potential in me. I found it through this list, like emails that are sent to many people. I'm forgetting the name of that, like
Let's serve.
listservs
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the Met jobs or the ES jobs. And then a colleague of mine was currently postdocing with my advisor right now, and he was like, "Did you see this? I think you should apply." And so I was like, "Oh, thank you. Yeah, I will apply." And so I did apply, and it was very aligned with the work that I've done in my master's. And it looked fun, and I'm like, "Oh, this satellite thing is something that I really enjoy because." Quick science thing here, but in the south hemisphere we don't have as many observations as in the northern hemisphere, and I think satellites are really, really exciting for that and opening a lot of opportunities. And so I've been thinking about them, even though I've focused a lot on the US in my satellite work. I keep in mind the potential that they have to improve our understanding of what's going on in the southern hemisphere and in places that have been underobserved. Um, so I was like, oh, going back to satellite observation seems like a good path for me. And yeah, and I was also ready for a change. Colorado is great, as you know. Um, I don't think, I mean, you have a giant background, playground there with the
Yeah. Yeah.
mountains, and yeah, and but I was also ready to do something different, to be somewhere different. Grad school is not easy, and I don't know, I feel like I usually want to escape situations by changing, completely switching things. So I was ready to leave. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. And it worked out because you met your partner, your
Yeah.
fiance
Yeah.
in Minnesota, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so if I think about grad school, it was half classes, half research, basically, and it doesn't actually pan out that way, right? Like
Mm.
like 3/4 research and 3/4 school, it feels like, but
Yeah.
it was fairly structured, right? The classes are very structured, right? They're, even though they're graduate classes, they still kind of felt like undergrad classes for the most part. I think things are shifting maybe recently in grad school where, experiential learning is this big push and project-based things. But when I was in my grad school classes, they were mostly like learn a lecture, do a homework, learn a lecture, do a midterm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it didn't feel like a big change from undergrad. And then the research was pretty directed by my advisor. He tended at that time to be very hands-on. So I never felt like I was, milling around in the wind. He would kind of pop in and be like, oh, what about this? What about that? Right. So I was pretty well directed. And then postdoc was kind of like a whole new world for me. But I'd love to hear kind of what that transition between grad school and postdoc was for you, which is a very open-ended question. So I'm happy to, be more granular as we go along, but kind of initial.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can talk related to what you said about research. But I think I also one of the things that I want to talk maybe later is like these, I would say, like last, if you're running a marathon or swimming 10K, like the last push, right? It's so that by the end you're so burned out, and then you have to start something right away. Um, I can talk about that, what that meant for me later, and how important it is to have supportive
Mm.
people in that sense. But regarding research, I love taking classes. I'm not like the best at doing homework and studying, but I just like it's so fun to go and learn from people who know their stuff, especially something that you enjoy. And there are some people that are really great at communicating their enthusiasm for their topic as well. So I don't know. I really enjoy that we have to take classes every semester.
I did
This
too.
is something very nerdy. I'm not super nerdy, but yeah. Um, so that was a huge change because I couldn't take classes here. Also, like because it's a soil, water, and climate department, it's like there's not a lot of like atmospheric classes within the department. There is like there obviously are, but there is some others as well. Um, and and I think one of the big things about being a postdoc and starting your postdoc is that you do not start with a cohort, which is what happens when you start as a PhD or master's student. And so there, it's like you are starting a job by yourself, and you are doing the onboarding by yourself, and you are learning about the group dynamics. You're learning about your boss. You're learning about how research is done. You're learning about the department. You're learning all by yourself, and that is, I mean, that is okay. But I personally, I think that that's better when you're doing that with someone that is going through the same things as you are going through. Um, and and yeah, research wise, it was so interesting because I don't know if I can say like my PhD advisor and my postdoc advisor have like completely opposite ways of advising or very similar ways. I think they are just different. I don't know how. It was like a lot more exploration in the postdoc, I feel. I had more of a like open blanket, like a white sheet of paper that I could complete with whatever I wanted. And I think partially it's that is the nature of the data that I'm working with, which is a lot of data. It can have a lot of different avenues. Like even now, I can see so many things done with that data that, you know. And so it did took a while and a lot of patience um, and frustration to like understand what it was wanted from me. And I don't this I it's not that I was mad because it was not clear. And at my postdoc advisor, it was just like, this is just so much, and so much data, and I don't know which avenue to go, which
Yeah.
path to take. Whereas with aircraft data, which is what I did for my PhD, you have that data, you have a sampling technique, like you know some of the questions already before you even go and do the sampling, because you are like probably managing a lot of money that you need to like strategize for that, right? But with satellite data, it might be a little bit more open ended. So I had to do that exploration, and it was intense, but it was like at the end of this 2-year path, I am so happy that I was allowed that exploration, and that I had very patient mentors that helped me throughout that path.
Yeah, I don't know if this was similar for you, but when I started my postdoc, and the pandemic did start a couple months in, so I feel like it was sort of a mediocre experience because of external situations, not really the postdoc itself. The research was actually cool. I quite enjoyed it. But I kind of realized how bad I was at being independent of a researcher. And I think part of that is, yeah, my advisor in grad school was very hands-on, almost to a fault, in my opinion. But I think part of it was just me of, not taking the initiative in grad school, and not really not it's hard to see the forest through, what is that saying? Forest for the trees, through the trees, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. English is my first language, doesn't mean I do it well.
I cannot help you with that saying because I don't remember what it is.
So am
Sorry.
I. But there's so many trees in anything,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in grad school, whatever. So it's hard
Hmm.
to kind of zoom out and be like, oh, I probably need to do this not on my own someday, but at a very independent level. And I need to be
Yeah.
kind of, guiding my own projects. And that's something that in my current role as a professor, I'm trying to figure out both for my grad students and my postdoc. I have my first postdoc, and
Ooh.
it's Sam O'Donnell. So, I get to
Yeah.
work with all the people that I already know, which is nice. Not true. My grad students are completely brand new to me, but yeah, I decided to work with Sam for my for postdoc. But and he's great. But I actually have these sort of moments of anxiety of like, am I giving them enough hands-on stuff, enough feedback, enough direction, because I am trying to actually encourage that transition to independence sooner, because I think it's really beneficial to be able to kind of walk out of your PhD or your postdoc and be semi independent or very independent, kind of depending on the
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
rather than sort of being dumped into the whole world. And like you say, like, we don't have a cohort, right? You didn't have 5 other postdocs who started the same day you started to be like, hey,
Yeah.
how's it going for you? It's just sort of these positions happen whenever in a company, same deal. There's some
Yeah.
companies that have cohort hires, but
Uh-huh.
most of them just hire as needed. And it
Mhm.
actually can be very disorienting because you feel like you have to start over from ground zero. Everyone else around you is smarter, including the grad students, because they've been in the group for longer than you. So you're like, well, crap.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yeah. And I would say like they also know how things work and like how things are expected. And you're
Yeah.
coming from a whole different culture. And so this idea of like a cultural shock, even like within the same country, right? Like it
Yeah.
happens at every level.
Yeah. I think it's, again, this is why we're having the conversation, because I think it just needs to be normalized that it's really uncomfortable. It's really
Yeah.
uncomfortable to go
Yeah.
from something that you've done for years, grad school, if you get a master's, 2, 3 years, PhD, however long it takes. And then they're like, okay, good luck. And there's almost, I think I'm hoping, it sounds like your postdoc mentor is pretty supportive. So I'm hoping that he
Is
understands that kind of transition zone between like, oh, there's a lot of hand holding to independence, but if you're not even getting that level of support, like, it can feel really bad.
Yeah, yeah. And so I want to touch on two things that you said.
Yeah.
And one is like the independence thing. And I think there's a lot of pressure on us on like, think that people that gotten PhDs and now we are thought of like the experts in our field and like now we can go and conquer things. And we are thrown on this pool of people who have been in the field for years. And I think one of the things that I keep reminding myself, and I like sometimes need help from my parents and from my partner, like remembering, is that these people have been in the field for a long time, and probably they were not super independent at the beginning either, and they were like learning. And so I think that that is one of the things that I try to keep in mind, and hand in hand with that is like try to keep growing towards that. So always like having this attitude of being like, okay, I did this now. How can I do it better next time so that I get to that goal that I see for myself, right? And then the other part, I forgot a little bit. I think that's the support. Oh yeah, the support part of it. Yes, my advisor is great. Both my advisors have been incredible people, some of the best people I've encountered in my life. I'm very very grateful, and yes, I think that the level of patience I have been imagining throughout this 2 year period. I'm like, if I were my boss, like I would have been so frustrated with me sometimes. So um, I'm very thankful, and I tell him that. And that also means that because I know that I would have been frustrated at myself if I were in that position, I also try to take feedback well. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
yeah, which can be hard sometimes, but we're not perfect.
Yeah. And I think those are really great points as we grow and you're going to be a boss someday of students or
Hopefully.
whatever it is, right? Like to definitely students, of to remind ourselves like, yeah, I feel like my boss should have been impatient at me when I was younger. And now you're going to have a student who's going to be just as bright and excellent as you are. And you're going to look at them and be like, oh, they're so bright and excellent. And they're really trying their best. And this is where they should be at this point in their career. And that's totally fine. And you're going to be older and you're just going to look back and be like, yeah, I was where I was meant to be. The student that I'm working with right now is where they're meant to be. I think, touching on another point you said, kind of rewording it, how I think about things is like that comparison game is very dangerous. And I play it all the time. And I know this about myself. And I constantly have to kind of like, either work it through it in therapy or walk myself back because I do, I have people that I'm around and I've hopped fields around a bit. And right now, my major research field is methane emissions from oil and gas systems. And I understand atmospheric emissions just fine. What I don't understand very well is oil and gas systems because they're this entire large engineering complicated body of their own. And then, people around me who have been in oil and gas for some time just like say something and I'm like, was I supposed to know that? Am I just dumb? It's really hard to, every time you make a change, there's going to be someone around you that's smarter at that thing than you are. And so to just realize that that's what we're doing, we're playing the comparison game. I think a lot of people call it, or they attribute it to imposter syndrome. Maybe I'm not as convinced. I'm not a fan of imposter syndrome, the label, because I feel like it gives power over, and I don't like that. I'm just like, oh yeah, I compared myself again. I shouldn't have done that. I'm okay. I will keep learning and growing.
Yeah, I mean, I do that all the time as well, and those are some of the moments where I'm like suffering the most emotionally. And I just want to pause and say that I love that you mentioned therapy because I am going to say that that's the thing that helped me through grad school. And I think that everybody should do it, but I think at least people should be more open to doing it because it's great. It's like you have a best buddy that you can talk about whatever you want with once or twice a month. So.
Yeah, so thank you for saying that. I didn't start therapy until my postdoc, and I'm so glad I did. And also, it would have been really helpful to have it during my PhD. Because I just, I've said this before in other episodes, but I got to my postdoc and I was like, I don't understand. Like, I like science and I like learning, but I'm unhappy all the time. Why am I unhappy all the time? And it took months to be like, oh, I hate coding for 8 hours a day. And guess what? My PhD was coding for 8 hours a day or writing. And my postdoc is coding for 8 hours a day or writing. And I liked the writing more. And so, now I don't think I've coded for like 3 months. It's embarrassing. I would like to code slightly more than that, slightly more frequently, but I've pivoted away from the things that make me miserable to the things that make me happy. And I'm still in the broad world that I'm in.
Yes. And do you feel a change in how you feel?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I'm so much more resilient. There were several things that happened this week that, Anna of even a few years ago would have just been spiraling over. There was some personal financial stuff. There was some mild conflict within the group, just these things that are not that fun to deal with. And yeah, I got kind of worked up at the time. And I probably, looking back, I'm like, you know what? Next time this happens, I'd like to be even less worked up. I'd like to just sort of be like, so it is, this is how it is. It's fine. But yeah, to kind of acknowledge like this could have sent me into like a week long or a month long like funk. And now I'm like, yeah, whatever. It was annoying. It's over. Some of it's not over. Some of it's not resolved, but it will be eventually.
Yeah. Nice. That's good to hear.
Yeah. So, you've thought about this postdoc transition a lot, and I don't want to miss anything that you feel is really important to say. So I'd love to kind of open the floor if you wanted to go back to that piece around kind of that last push of burnout. If there's other pieces you want to touch on, I'd really love to hear them.
Yeah, I think that is for some reason to me the most important one, and the one that like impacted all of the other pieces on transition. And like I was so tired by the end of my PhD, and for many factors, I was definitely having a stronger depressive feelings, a stronger anxious feelings. I was on medication. I was trying to finish a PhD dissertation. I had to travel a lot by the end. I came to Ecuador, then I went to a wedding in Thailand, then I went to a faculty meeting in Chile. So like I was all
Wow.
over for like a very short amount, like in very short period of time. I was supporting on a field campaign that summer. I was dealing with some like work conflicts as well. So a lot going on, and I I was also more lonely towards the end, just because like you have to finish and you just have to get it done,
Yeah.
and there is not a lot of time to socialize on or to take care of those human relationships that need work, right? Like we don't always find the energy to do that. Luckily, I had really good friends who understood where I was at that moment. And so, because of my immigration status, I had to start my job at UMN right away. So I could not take a time off between my PhD and postdoc, which, if people are listening, if they can do it, I highly suggest it. Take a
Take
few
time
months
off.
off. Yes,
Yes.
yes. So I started this postdoc, and of course, I wanted to put my best effort on it. But I had two papers from my PhD still on the works. Two
Yeah.
papers.
A
That's
lot.
a lot. Um, so thank you for letting me graduate, committee. um, and I made a promise to Emily. I made a promise to myself. I made a promise to my co-authors. I wanted to publish those papers, but I also wanted to move forward with this research. I was so tired. I could not work the full 8-hour day. Like I couldn't do it. So there was a moment within the first 2 months where I was like, I cannot do this anymore. And I went and talked to my boss, and I told him like, hi, this is going on with me. I can't. I need to take 2 weeks off. And this is not something that I came with the decision alone. Like my mom helped me, my partner helped me, and they were like, do it, do it, do it. And I was like, no, what is he going to say? No, But they were
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you just ask. And he was like, well, first of all, thank you for letting me know. I am glad that you're comfortable telling me this. I am sorry that you're going through it. Please do. And obviously, I didn't have my vacation time by then, because that's the other thing. When you join a postdoc, now you're a worker, and so like you have to ask for like vacation, which was not my
Yeah.
experience in grad school. Like you actually have to go into the system and like log your vacation days. It's kind of fun and also like weird. And he's like, whenever you have that availability, just log it into the system so that we can account for those days that you won't be working. And so I did, and I took those 2 weeks off, and it was like the best decision that I took. And I finished one of those, I submitted one of those papers throughout that time. So it was not a vacation, but I took off my plate one of the things that was
Yeah.
waiting on me. And then I joined this position 2024. And so when I look back at 2024 now, I am like, man, I was like really struggling that year. And so I see that year as a recovery year for myself, which is looking at it with a lot of compassion. Sometimes I'm not as good with myself as I sound right now. I'm sounding very nice to myself, but it's not that all the time. But I also like feel that maybe it was like I could have been more productive for my boss and this project. So I feel a lot of guilt around that. And then so I published that first of my PhD papers in that year. And then on 2025, I was like, I need to get the postdoc paper out. And so I was like, I worked on it. But I had the other paper from my PhD that wasn't the revisions, and I had gotten the revisions back. So I was trying to work on that really hard, and I was trying to work on the other, like those two papers at the same time, and I was crashing again. So there was so I come again And I was like, hey, boss, I need to take a week off to finish this paper. He was like, do it. And
Nice.
so I took a week off and finished that paper, and that last paper of my PhD got published. And after that, I put so much effort on finishing this current paper that I'm working with, which is my first paper for my postdoc. 2 years in, I've just sent it to my co-author. So a little bit of a slow progress on, like the ideal productivity pace, but yeah, that's what it was, and it's a really good paper, and I'm happy that I'm there now, and I'm starting my second project of my postdoc, which I'm so excited about. And now I feel excited again about science, and that's the thing, right? Like 2024 me was just like, why am I doing this? I am not happy anymore because I was so tired. I was like, I don't want to think of wildfires again. Like wildfires, I already did that. Wildfires are like a thing of the past for me. I want something different and exciting.
Yeah.
And now I am so excited about it again.
Yeah.
I'm very
I
grateful. Yeah.
I love that. I'm really glad, one, that you have the advisor who is gracious enough for, allowing these times. And, we don't need to hypothesize what you would have done had he not been that gracious, but it's very, I'm going to assume that when you were interviewing with him and everything, you could sense that he was a person who also is a person, not just a science robot.
Yeah.
And, none of us are science robots. And I've never seen a postdoc position, and they're probably out there, but I've just never seen them, that says, as a part of this postdoc, you are required to write a paper a year or whatever. Like, it's just kind of like, you're going to come do research with the implied assumption of like, yeah, there's going to be some papers out of it. And I think it can be easy for us to sort of be like, I'm not doing enough for my boss or whatever, but our jobs are always for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Our jobs are not to make our company $1 million. Our jobs are not to help our boss get tenure. Our jobs are for us to grow and learn. And when we're the happiest growing and learning, and I'm so glad to hear that you're excited about science again, like that's when the productivity, quote unquote, that is going to, quote, help the boss or the company or whatever is going to roll out, right? If we're just grinding and pushing and forcing, like, maybe we'll get some okay stuff out that isn't going to make a big impact one way or another. But I truly believe that when we're actually like excited about things, we're into what we're doing, like that's when the really good paper comes out. That's when the really cool new idea comes out. You can't have really cool new ideas when your body and your nervous system is in fight or flight, it's in stress, it's in overwhelm, overload, exhaustion, all these things that is really common throughout academic careers. So I'm so glad that you can frame 2024 as that recovery year, and like it doesn't matter what you got done in that year, you recovered. Like I'm looking back at 2025 for me and for my research group, and I'm like, okay, you know what, 2025 for us, we survived, and that's basically all we did, and that's awesome. Great. Now in 2026, we have enough funding to be all right for the year. We're still figuring out next year. That's what it always looks like, unfortunately. And I'm going to really start encouraging everyone, like, okay, we didn't write papers last year. We wrote some grants and we got the bare minimum done on the projects we needed to get done. And there was a really big project that a really big report came out of, which is awesome. But now I'm like, all right, let's all just, breathe, and let's start working on papers. Let's start working on science. Let's start doing what we want to do as an academic group, not just, surviving, because yeah, things aren't so much better out there, but now we're kind of in this like new normal, I guess. And I'm not expecting that everyone is going to agree with this viewpoint, but that's how I'm trying to view my 2026. And that's how I'm going to encourage people to try to view, in my group, to try to view like, okay, we all have projects. Let's just do really good work, because we don't even know where the next round of funding this would come from. And it could come from someone who sees that really good paper that we finally managed to put out and says, yeah, this does need to continue and I'm going to fund it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So anyways, that got a little deep, but
no, all good.
But yeah, I think those are really good points about burnout. It's definitely something that can be a challenge.
And
You know, I took, yeah,
sorry,
go
I
ahead.
just want to say that I think that there is a little bit of a maybe an unnecessary battle of what it used to be and what is now,
Hmm.
or the old and the new. And I recently heard someone saying, like, you're never going to, if you stay in academia, you're never going to work less than you're working right now. And
No.
I was like, I don't know. I mean, like, maybe that's true. But that doesn't mean that we don't need to take care of ourselves, right? Like, I think there is like a polarization of what taking care of yourself means, and as any polarization, I don't think that's good. I actually think like I've the term self-care has been coined by feminists years ago, and it doesn't mean self-care in the individualistic form, but it's self-care so that you can be present and available for your community. That is what self-care should be. And so, like, you're taking care of yourself so that you can be for others, or for your science, or for scientific community, or for your family, or for whatever, right? And so, um, yeah, I think there needs to be I would love for there to be a new normal about this, in academia.
Well,
In everywhere, yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's, you know, I started this podcast and I was like, I don't totally know why I'm starting this, but I just feel like I need to. And I've realized over the last few months, like, I don't have explicit episodes on this yet or whatever, but one thing I really deeply care about is culture change. If I cannot become a full professor, how do I want to put this? If I can't become a full professor without working 80 hours a week, I'm not going to become a full professor. Full stop. I do not thrive on long hours. I, you know, my productivity goes down, my creativity tanks, I burn out really fast. I get really angry and stressful and mean to people around me that I love, which is not fun. Um, and yeah, I completely agree that, yeah, there's maybe these old paradigms that, if I'm being very blunt, feel very based on two-person household where the woman stayed home and raised the family, and the man was like, I will now work 60 to 80 hours a week because, you know, the woman's got the family taken care of and I quite like what I do, or what, you know, whatever, right? Like, I don't believe in that.
No.
Right? I'm the worker in this family, and I have animals I take care of. They're not as complicated as
Mhm.
children, but they need time. I have me that I take care of, and I am complicated and I need time.
Me too.
I have hobbies. I have things I enjoy. I make music. I go on dog walks. I play in the mountains, all these things.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not a big person on regrets, but I had a quick situation earlier this year that I actually keep returning to and being like, yep, that was the moment. Not the moment, but that was one of those moments where I could have done this, but I just kind of laughed and was like, yeah, sure. And it was me just saying in front of a couple people in my department, oh yeah, one of my boundaries this semester is that unless you are in some like insane time zone, I don't meet before 9 a.m. You know, there's always occasional exceptions, but I'm working before 9 a.m., but I don't want to talk to anyone before 9 a.m. And they just kind of laughed, like, oh, yeah, well, good luck with that. Like,
Oh,
you know, just have so many meetings. You got to meet when you got to meet. And I'm like,
no.
why is it a crime to have a boundary?
Yeah.
Like, this is actually insane. Yet, like, you need to have boundaries. You can't just, I don't know. I feel like we're just expected to like roll over and be available at any moment for anything. And, you know, funding agencies, especially private industry, love to come up with some proposal call and they're like, oh yeah, we need this next week. And I'm like, oh, I am part of a university and the university requires like 3 weeks or something. Also, I as a human being require, you know, some time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think it's just like, it's unsustainable to keep, as you were saying, to keep going at this like breakneck pace of endless work, endless stress. Like I can't tell you the number of emails I received from my advisor in grad school, who was pre-tenure at the time, that came at like weird hours. And I I might be getting this wrong, so I apologize, but I'm gonna say that I think it was partly because he would sort of just have bad sleep because he was so anxious sometimes, and just like wake up at 2 a.m. and be like, well, I guess I'm gonna do emails. You know what I do when I wake up at 2 a.m? I do not think about work. I'm like, no, man, that's just gonna stress me out so bad. I'm like, I'm gonna do like my meditation thoughts and some breathing exercises. If it's really bad, I guess I'll get up and read a fiction book.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I'm going to count how many hours I would get to sleep if I sleep now, and then I will do the same in 30 minutes.
this is true. I'm like, oh boy, the alarm goes off at 5:30. So if I go to sleep now, it's tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah. So I love that. Yes, let's be a part of the culture change.
Yeah,
Hopefully. Like professors who are successful because we're good at what we do, not because we ground ourselves into the ground. Like, well,
yeah.
I'm using ground twice, but whatever. We, grind ourselves into the ground from just working. I know we're going a little over time.
Yeah, I'm just going to finish with one thought that I told you a few weeks ago, and I want to reiterate here. I said this a little bit, but my two advisors during my academic journey, actually my three advisors, have been very, very, very different. And I'm taking my grad school advisor, Emily Fisher, and my boss now, Dylan Millett, and they're just different. They are different people. They have different personalities, and both are really, really successful. And so I was trying to make sense of that in my brain. Like, so now what do I do? Like, which way do I go? And I didn't have an answer for that. And the answer is like, I can be who I am and I can be successful. And that was like the best realization I had walking up the stairs after a meeting with Dylan. And so I think that people should know that, like, we don't have to follow one model. Like, we can be ourselves and do good science and be successful and be good to others.
Yeah. If you find your STEM identity, I should just like cut that little sound chunk and be like, this is why the podcast exists. No, that's so great. Yeah. And there is no one way of doing it, right? Like, most people are listening, don't know what I look like. I have a ton of tattoos. I love tattoos. I'm itching for more. And, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm going to wear a tank top at a conference, like a professional looking one, but, I get hot. So I constantly need ventilation options. I think, maybe making it salient, right, to people who got excited about the Winter Olympics, like I did. I watched way too much Olympics. But, I know now I'm blanking on her name. This is embarrassing. The American figure skater who everyone has fallen in love with. Oh gosh, what is her name? This is so bad. Anyways, the one who won gold, and I'm sorry for forgetting her name. Alyssa Loop, there we go.
Oh,
and everyone was just, I don't know if you followed the story at all, but everyone who was watching, who loves to, do some armchair psychoanalysis, was like, she's just being herself. Like, this is so cool. And she quit the sport for a couple of years because she was too stressed out and too overworked. And then she came back for herself, not because, and she was like, I'm not gonna do what you guys want to tell me to do. I'm skating to my own music. I'm eating how I want to eat. I'm doing what I want to do. And you could see it, right? She just skated so gorgeously, had so much fun. And I was like, yeah, like that's what I'm talking about. You just go out there and you be yourself, and not everyone's going to like you. I'm sure there's many people who don't like me. I'm sure there's people who have started this podcast and they're like, her voice is super annoying and it's not very well edited, and I'm not going to listen to this next. And I'm like, that's fine. We're doing very light minimal editing because I'm a human being who does not say every single word perfectly, and that is okay.
Yeah. You'll have to deal with that's one of the things that you're doing bravely, like being online and have to deal with that backlash that inevitably comes from just being a public figure online.
Yeah. I mean, my following is small enough that so far, if anyone is annoyed, they haven't been energetic enough to comment on it. But I'm sure someday someone's going to be like, what's wrong? Her deal. Why can't she say whatever? I don't care. So again, like, I know we've gone over, but I do have a couple of like ending questions I love to ask everyone if you have just a couple more minutes for that.
Let's do it.
So they're kind of related questions, but the first one is, looking back, and you can look at whatever time frame you want, I'll put in mind maybe going to school to postdoc, but whatever. What's your favorite kind of update you've had over the years in your academic career in identity?
Update?
Update, shift,
Yeah,
change,
yeah,
update.
yeah.
Yeah, however you want to put it.
Ooh. Wow, that's an interesting question. I am so different to who I was 8 years ago when I came to the US. I've grown in so many different ways. I think one of them, like you said, is setting boundaries, which is not, I had to do um, in a not very pleasant situation, and it was really hard. And then the other one was understanding the difference between an more individualistic society and a more of like a community-based society, and how neither is good or bad, but there are beautiful merges that can happen between the two. And so understanding how my personality can change to benefit both of those, the things that I like from both of those ways of being with other people.
Yeah, I love that. You're a systems engineer. We all are, actually, I've realized, because systems engineering is really broad, but yeah, you're like bringing in these different pieces and making them your own. And that's super cool. And then the other related question is, what's a core piece of your identity that you're still proud that you still have?
Oh, I want to be good to people, and I want to make people feel good.
You do. You were so good
Thank
at
you.
it.
And I hope I can do that for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we overlapped for, I guess, about 2 years in
Yeah.
grad school. And every conversation, I mean, it was the same with Sateli. Every conversation I had with you was just bright and cheerful. And like, I'm a bit of a moody person. I know this about myself. And I was real moody in grad school. So it was really beneficial for me to just go talk to someone who, I don't know, Emily Fisher is just great at
Yes.
getting all these bubbly people like Jared and Jacob,
Yeah.
just say
Yeah.
some other names, but like they're all just like, and yeah, walking into your guys' large shared office was just like a breath of needed fresh air and the kind of trenches of school and everything every
Yeah.
time. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. You were also a joy, and someone that I look up to. And just going back to your 8 hour work, I remember when I was doing my prelim, there was a story about you being like, I'm just going to work from 9 to 4 in my prelim, and if I don't complete it, that's okay. And I'm like, you know what? That sounds smart. I didn't do it, but I tried really hard. I'm like, it helps you not panic about it. So, but then there
Yeah.
were other people that were like, I'm going to stay all like an all-nighter. And I'm like, that sounds horrible. I cannot do that. And I admire you for doing it, but I can't. So
I'm glad that was inspiring. Yeah, for the listeners, as a part of our exams process, we had a prelim, and one piece of it was you were given, I don't know how many questions, we'll say 4 or 5 questions from your committee that could be on anything related to your research, and you were given 48 hours to complete the questions in. The implication being you can work as many or few of those 48 as you want. And at that time in life, I was like, you know what? I did long hours in undergrad. It was terrible. I sucked at it. I'm going to work an 8-ish hour day, and it's fine. And I got through the questions well enough. And then after I turned them in, I realized I made a couple errors. And as a part of the next step, we had sort of this like presentation to our committee about a few different things, including the questions. And I just threw up some slides that said, hey, I made an error on this one, so I'd like to make a correction verbally in front of you guys. And they were like, great, sounds good, pass.
yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. The people who worked all night, just that seems insane, but that's all right. Each to their own.
That's them. They can do it. Great. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I know it's going to be really helpful to people. I think it's so cool that, no one's path looks the same, and no one's background or experiences look the same. And yet there's always common themes, right? We always can see ourselves in someone else if we're listening and reflecting. So I think it's incredibly helpful.
And
so thank you.
And that social support that it's invisible sometimes is really, really important. So we're here for you. We're going through the same, even if we don't know you, whoever you're listening, but yeah.
Yeah. Future listener. Yes.
Yes.
You've got this.
You got
Job
it.
transitions are hard. They're always hard. They're never easy. If someone says it's easy, they're strange.
Yeah.
Maybe not strange, but possibly lying, if I'm being honest.
Maybe.
That was such a fun conversation for me. I really hope you enjoyed it. Julieta is such a delightful, delightful human being. And as I started the episode out with, maybe the learn and move your feet, or we talked about a lot of things. What's maybe one thing you can take away to contemplate or put into action this week is to start right now, if you haven't already, acknowledging to yourself that transitions are hard. Maybe you're halfway through grad school. Maybe you're in a job that you don't love and you know that you're going to be changing jobs soon. Even though the thing on the other side of the fence, the grass is always greener, always looks a little shinier, there are going to be challenges, and it's okay. What are the resources you have right now? What are the resources you might need to pick up to become more resilient to these changes? We talked about therapy in the episode. Therapy is just one of many resources available to you. So I hope you found this episode really helpful. Of course, I would like to end the episode with a song of the week. So since we both went to grad school together, I was thinking today about, what was music that I really loved in grad school, and I still love today, but maybe I emphasize more. And one of those was like New Orleans brass bands music. I still love that kind of music, but I don't listen to it as much. Galactic is one of those bands, absolutely fantastic. So today's song of the week is From the Corner to the Block, and it's the collaboration between Dirty Dozen Brass Band, Juvenile, and Galactic. I'll post it in the show notes. As always, this podcast is not affiliated with my research and teaching roles at Colorado State University, but a part of my belief that there are common things that we all struggle with. Some things we struggle with more than others. But there are ways to overcome these struggles to start trending what we're doing more and more towards what we love to do, rather than, things that we're kind of good at and that we can sort of slog through. So if you found this episode helpful, of course, sharing with a friend is really helpful. Subscribing, leaving reviews, all that good stuff. Music by XS Sass. You can follow me on Instagram, STEMdenity. All the links are in the show notes. I really appreciate you being here, and we will talk next week.